Good evening, everyone. How are you? My name is Daryl Hobson, school counselor here at Oak Park River Forest High School. I'd like to welcome each and every one of you to our counseling department's college planning for juniors, class of 2022. We've made it here, guys. So hats off to you. Before we get started, I'd just like to give some acknowledgments. And I thought about this actually, having a conversation with my own son, who told me the other day, he said, wow, Dad, this school thing, we get all the work, but none of the fun. And so I just want to acknowledge our students for putting in all the work that they have so far and continue to put in under just some very different circumstances for all of us. So I just want to recognize our students for all their hard work. Obviously, I want to recognize you parents for making sure that the students have everything that they need to be successful in this remote space. Obviously, none of us could have foreseen what we'd be in right now, but everyone's doing the best they can, and it's really amazing. And so I want to make sure that you parents have been amazing. I want to make sure I recognize our administration, specifically Miss Linda Parker, who's our director of student services, who works so amazingly hard to make sure that we have everything that we need to give our students the best possible experience that we can. Ms. Parker works so hard, and we recognize it, all that she does. If there's anyone that you want to remember to bring an apple to at any time, make sure it's Ms. Parker and all the work that she's done. Obviously that we're together here. I want to recognize our tech team today, Ms. Telson Sadowski and Mr. Christopher Schulten. Has been really great in getting us off the ground. You'll hear my voice today, but this is a team effort. Myself, as well as Ms. Jacqueline Hansen. You also have Mr. Esteban Medina and Mr. Derek Radzewski, counselors on our team as well. And so obviously this is a team effort, but I want to point before we get started, your attention to that little box in the corner. I think it's purple. You have to forgive me because I'm deficient in colors here. So just a Q&A reminder there. Just know that questions will be, you'll be able to ask them and they'll be answered throughout the presentation. But before you ask a question, please scroll through. The question may have been asked and answered, so be sure to scroll through those questions. And at the end, there'll be some time to answer, some unanswered, pardon me, easy for me to say, right? There'll be time for you to ask any unanswered questions toward the end there, right? But if you have anything that's very personal or specific to your student, please direct that to your student's counselor. Be a better place to field that question. Chris, let's go to the next slide. All right, so our goals for tonight. We want to establish a college planning timetable and a to-do list. We're going to talk about financing. Okay, I know it's sometimes difficult, but very necessary conversation to have. And so we're going to talk about finding the most and the best bang for your buck in the college experience. We're going to talk about fit, the right fit for the student, not us as parents. Not what our friends like, what the neighbor's doing, but the best fit for me as a student. We're going to talk about the requirements for admissions. We're going to go through those. We're going to touch on those. We're going to talk about the preparation and registration for the standardized tests. And I know there are a lot of questions out there, and we'll address some of those here today. We'll also delve into Naviance. Many of us have heard that word before, and so we're going to look at it a little bit more tonight and how it can help our juniors conduct their college search. So, Chris, let's go on to our next slide. All right. College fit. This is so important. For me, I'll never talk to a student about a good school. I will talk to them about a good school for them. And it's very important that we recognize that every student experience is going to be unique, and they have to look for things in college that fit their unique skills, needs for growth on that particular campus. So we're not going to focus on the names. Again, we're going to talk about fit. Where am I going to grow the most? So that's what we want to talk about when we talk about college fit. Our next slide there, Chris. Now, location is definitely a part of seeing fit. Some of our students like to travel, some like to stay a little closer. Obviously, the pandemic has affected what our students are looking for in terms of traveling, different places in different campuses. So, but location is certainly important. As you can see, many of our students do travel out of state for school, but certainly we have a good deal of our students who do stay in state, whether it's for a 4-year or 2-year school experience. So in rounding out this list, you can see that students at Oak Park River Forest High School definitely choose post-secondary options across the continuum. So whether it be school, employment, trade schools, career training, military, or some other options that our students may choose to explore. Chris, our next slide there. Ooh, another one about fit, that size of the campus. That's important for us. Some students like the personal atmosphere and small classes of a small school. I had the opportunity to be a hall director on campus, and I tell you, on a small school campus, and I actually would get calls from professors as a hall director because a student didn't show up for classes, and I was charged with knocking on the door, seeing where that student was, why they weren't in class. And so some students enjoy that type of attention. Some students need that type of motivation. Certainly having someone concerned with where they're going, whether they're going in class, where they're going to be in class, and certainly held accountable. Some students don't necessarily appreciate that level of attention, if you will. So, but many students need that personal atmosphere where they get to know everyone on campus, really get to have personal relationships with their professors. Other students like the independence of a larger school. Obviously, because the schools are so large, sometimes as many as 60,000 on a campus. Well, in large classes, you know, the professor isn't going to be following up on you. There's an independence that comes with getting yourself up, getting to class or not, and making sure that all the work is there, because the attendance isn't recorded. However, all the grades will be recorded, and that's the only thing that, or the most important thing, and most of the professors are concerned with in a large school. Also, there are many choices on a larger campus as well, whether it be research choices, class choices, or activity choices. So it's another thing in terms of the size that students consider. We're looking at a college fit. How well students might be prepared for research, if there's a research team, also internship opportunities that can differ based on the size of a campus. And also, lastly, the competition for graduate study programs. How prepared does the campus, how prepared will they make me for a graduate program? Sometimes the larger schools have those graduate programs right on campus, and students can matriculate there fairly easy because many of the professors are teaching in both programs, so it may be a little bit easier there. But that's certainly something that we can consider when we're talking about size. Chris, let's go to the next slide and look at something else in terms of what our college fit is. And that's our campus climate. And it's important to know as a student what I prefer in my campus climate and culture. Does it support who I am as a student? And we look at things like maybe Greek life, activities, ethnic groups, support groups on campus, volunteer organizations on campus. Can I grow in that atmosphere? Is it a quote unquote party school? Do I need to come out of my shell? Is that something that I find important? The instructional approach of the school be conducive to my preferred learning style. In here, this is a lot to do with smaller and larger campuses as well. Baked into that could be support services on a campus also. So those are important to note also. What do I want? What do I need in college? And that's very important. Do I need to have a co-ed dorm? Do I need to make sure that the school has steak and shrimp every Friday? Well, do I want a school that gives me a great opportunity for employment upon graduation? There are some places that you can look at some of the tips on college climates. There's some testimonials and other information. A great place to start would be looking at the campus newspaper to find out what issues are important there. What are they talking about? Are they talking about the latest in the world? Are they talking about something important that happened on campus, the car wash down the block? So how involved they might be with the community, local community. But those campus student newspapers can provide a lot of great information there. Also, the FISC Guide to Colleges provides a lot of feedback based on their surveys that they've taken on different campuses here. Chris, our next slide, please. So another one, our college fit would be a course of study. Does the school offer the majors and minors that interest me? Ones that I want to pursue that will certainly catapult me to the next phase of my life? Are the major specific? Can I develop my own majors? And that's usually something that students can experience on smaller campuses where students can actually develop their own majors in minors. In smaller campuses, it's not uncommon in some places for students to have a double major and a minor. So those are part of the fits on the campus. Does the school offer ample internships and study abroad, undergrad research opportunities? That's important. The internship opportunities, whether they be around the campus or the relationships that the school has with different companies in my field. Now this is a really good one is students look to make money after school. What percentage of graduates at the school are employed upon graduation? That's important. Schools do keep that data. It is available, so students can find out how prepared they'll be for employment upon graduation. Also, students accept into their first choice of graduate school. How prepared are students to accept graduate school upon graduation from different programs that I may be interested in? Again, what do I want versus what do I need in a college? Sometimes you can have both, but it's about priorities and the course of study. That's another important area. So, Chris, let's go to the next slide. Selectivity. This is about how tough the schools are to get into. But we have to be very honest about who we are as a student. My grades and test scores, my overall profile, that's, my community service activities, other student activities I've been involved with. Are they on par with students who were admitted previously from Oak Park River Forest High School? And we'll look at scattergrams and Naviance a little bit later, so you can actually see where students can measure themselves against past Oak Park River Forest graduates who've applied to different schools there. And we'll look at that a little bit later. Now, do I have a balanced approach in selecting schools here? A reach school, a match school, or a safety school? Now, when we talk about each of those, safety school obviously is that it's not as difficult to get into based on my credentials. A match school is that I'm right on par with those students who've been accepted there. And a reach school also means that I'm reaching up a little bit. I may have a couple of the stated requirements, but not all. But still, is a place I'm interested in, and I want to give it a shot. Now, the one thing that I always impress upon all of my students, whether your school is categorized by you as a reach, a match, or a safety, you should be able to see yourself on any of those campuses. Okay, you shouldn't be disappointed by any of those choices of admissions. Now, how about look beyond the ranking list? And that's very easy to look at the name schools. And we mentioned that before, looking at just the name schools there. So, but there are schools off that quote unquote beaten path that provide some incredible experiences, a lot of successful students there as well. How challenging do I want my coursework to be? Similar to high school. Do I need to have an experience that I'm going to be locked into my room, locked into the library, locked into the lab, and not necessarily be able to grow outside of the classroom, whether it's be pledging to a fraternity or a sorority, doing community service, doing other activities on the campus, whether intramurals, so on and so forth. That's all affected by the amount of classroom hours that you'll have. All right, Chris, let's go on to the next slide. Okay, selectivity, when you'll see these words, this is kind of what they mean. Open enrollment means everyone is accepted there, usually needs high school diploma. And this is mainly our community colleges. So we have an open enrollment there. So less competitive, looking at the top 65%. And you can see kind of the test scores there, 20 and below on ACT, 1050 or below on SAT. And I'm just giving you a ballpark of when you see these words, what they mean. Looking for very competitive schools, the top 35 and rankings and what have you. Again, you see the 24 to 25 ACT and 11, 60 to 1260 on the SAT, and ultra competitive. And those are ultra competitive schools where we're looking at just the top 5% there in 34 and above on the ACT and 1500s and above on the SAT. So when you see those names, open to ultra conservative, you have an idea of what that means, and certainly get an opportunity to match my own credentials with that particular competition to get into a specific school there. All right, Chris, let's go on to our next slide. Standardized tests for admissions. Now, most colleges will accept either the SAT or the ACT for admissions. They have what's called conversion tables in which they convert one score to the other score. Keep in mind that Illinois is an SAT state, and the SAT is a graduation requirement for all students. But they are different exams, and so if a student can, I do encourage them to attempt both tests because they are different, and because they are different, student may score a little bit higher on another exam, the ACT versus the SAT. Sorry. If a student's taking the ACT, find out if the writing portion is required to whatever school the student would like to apply to. Keep in mind that a growing number of schools are becoming test optional. And what that means that students are not required to submit their test scores for admissions. Does that mean that the schools are less competitive? Absolutely not. As a matter of fact, you get more applications. But it does mean that schools recognize that students are more than a test score in terms of admissions, in terms of their whole body of work. And that's exactly what happens with those schools that don't require the test to be submitted. They're going to look at a lot more of the student's body of work in high school, not only their grade point average, which data shows us is the best and biggest determining factor on college success. They also look at activities inside and outside of school. So those are all important there. For a list of those test optional schools, you can go to fairtest.org. That list, again, is growing. And keep in mind that it does not mean that schools are less competitive. In some of the more selective schools, actually, we are required to take the SAT, but some of the more selective colleges require the SAT subject test, and these are also called SAT 2s, in addition to the ACT or the SAT. Now, this could be specific to a major, or many just some just require a number of SAT 2 tests to give a better picture of the student's ability. All right, Chris, let's go on to our next slide. All right. So there are some test prep options for those of us who are looking right now at testing. For preparing for the SAT, Khan Academy is a wonderful resource. It's free. It's online test prep. You can go to khanacademy.org. But certainly to have a more individualized prep program, students can connect their College Board account and their PSAT scores to Khan Academy. And with that information, Khan Academy will, again, provide an individualized prep program that's specific to the students' testing needs. Now, this information will go out in December for any courses that start in January. So be on the lookout for those. Make sure that your student is watching, paying attention to emails. That's going to be very important. Students preparing for the ACT. ACT Academy is free. Academy.act.org is great. ACT.org has a lot of practice examples and study guides available. Our libraries and Amazon obviously has a lot of ACT books, and a lot of test prep companies. There's Revolution Prep, Excel Edge, Kaplan, Huntington, and others have test prep courses. Those do have a fee attached to them. So if you plan to go into one of those courses, just be aware that they do have fees attached to them. All right, Chris, let's go on to our next slide. All right. So our subject tests, I mentioned that before. The SAT-2s, again, they're mostly required by more selective schools. Now, the SAT-2 tests are offered on the the SAT testing dates except March. They're offered on every SAT testing date except March. Now, students cannot take both. They cannot take both the SAT and the SAT subject test on the same date. So make sure you're planning that out if you're looking at some of the deadlines, especially if you're planning for the spring. Okay, you should be planning for the spring if you're going to do October 15th and November 1st college deadlines. So make sure you're looking into taking care of those subject tests in the spring if you're going to do some early applications. So another place, Campus Prep can provide a list of colleges that do require the subject test, so you can see those for planning out. So, all right, let's go on to our next slide and let's start to top admissions criteria. This is important, and there's a reason why. Again, the GPA is the #1 here. As I said before, data has shown that GPA is the best determining factor on college success. So want to make sure that our students have the best GPA they can possibly have. So that's going to be looked at. Obviously, the rigor of coursework over 4 years of high school. That's going to be looked at as well. Standardized test scores, which we've just gone over. GPA trends, okay? We want to see, and college admissions counselors want to see the plane taking off, not landing. Okay, so they definitely want to see that plane taking off. So they want to see an upward trend over 4 years there. So, but they'll definitely be looking at that. Extracurricular involvement. We talked about the entire high school experience, the whole student, looking at leadership, longevity, means organizations over time, regional and national recognition and certain competitions. So all of those are important for each of our students there. Excuse me. And finally, community service. That's very important to know that our students are getting out, doing work, having an impact in the world here. All right, Chris, let's go on to our next slide. All right. All right, finding the right college fit. And there are some ways to do that. College callers, some of us have heard about college callers before. So we have hundreds of college admissions counselors visit Oak Park River Forest High School. So yes, your student is in demand. These, in many cases, the folks who come to campus to visit with our students are the individuals who will be making decisions on admissions applications for students. So it's really a great opportunity for students to start to form those relationships. Students can actually register in Naviance to get email reminder about the college callers, when they're on campus, who's on campus. So they'll be able to sign up for those. Students have gotten information, and they can do that. And now the information I'm giving you right now is the information as if we're in the building next spring, hopefully. But if students do plan to go to a college callers, they must get a pass from their teachers to attend those sessions, and they have to do that a day in advance. Okay, but there are other ways, and obviously our current state of college callers. Chris, let's go on to our next slide. So we're virtual right now, right? So our college callers is virtual as well. So the visits will be held remotely before school on B days and after school on all days. Okay, they'll be during lunch as well. Students can pop in via Zoom. Students cannot miss any classes to attend the college callers. So they began last week. They're continuing, but keep in mind that we're going to try to have these visits recorded so students can go back and get any information that they might need for the sessions there. Let's go to the next slide there, Chris. All right, so if a student wants to join the college callers, we know that our students love to look at those phones. So here's a cool way to use it. They can get text messages, join Remind, and they'll get all the updated information, you know, who's on campus and when. All right, Chris, let's go to our next slide. All right, so not only will we have our college callers, but they're virtual college fairs as well. So, and there are several and really informative. I'm not sure if I mentioned this earlier. I actually have a junior student, and I've actually had her register for several of these virtual college fairs, and they've been really informative. She's gotten a lot out of those. As you can see, the Ncaa fairs, there are multiples, and so students can go in and register for those. You can see the Vine Student Panel College Fair. That was coming up soon, so students can dig in. Most require a registration, so if you do plan to go to either the Ncaa fair next week or the Vine College panel coming up in a few weeks, look at those sites right away to see if there's a registration involved there so that students can experience those fairs there. Again, we have the Chicago area regional reps, lunch visits, YouTube channel. So a lot of great information there. Students can actually dig in to the virtual college fairs, and keep in mind that the colleges have adjusted to the remote learning space. And so they have prepared for these fairs and recognize what students need out of the fairs. And so I think this would be a great opportunity for our students. Let's go on to our next slide, Chris. The right college fit. So one of the things that we have is really cool, right in our own backyard. Even if the student doesn't plan to stay here, within a few hours drive, a student can experience a community college, a small school that's close to home, a small school that's in a suburban setting, a mid-sized school in an urban area, mid-sized schools in a suburban area. And then we have the larger schools in urban areas. And then you can see a little bit further out, students can see small schools, mid-sized, and larger schools. Again, even if a student isn't planning to be local, being on these campuses, they can actually get an idea of what that experience will be like in these different size categories for them. Right. Let's go to our next slide. The cost of college. Now, getting a little warm here under the lights. It's the most important conversation you'd rather not have, but you shouldn't avoid. As I mentioned, I have a high school junior, And my wife and I had a discussion with her right before school started for her this week. And we talked about the college search, and we had a very important conversation about cost and what that looks like for us and for our family. And while it's a conversation may not be uncomfortable, the feedback that she gave us was so incredible. She really felt good about having that conversation. It was one less thing, one unknown that she could take off the table. The processing of itself is going to create so many, but having that important piece handled was really important to her. And I'm so glad that we were able to have that conversation. I do encourage you to have that conversation. Again, it's not necessarily about college selection, but it certainly is about college cost. Right? So let's go to our next slide here. All right. Now we talk about bang for our buck, and that's important. And we, whether we're buying, shoes, a meal, a car, we want to get the best bang for our bucks and a good return on our investment. So it's just as important in this process. And so we want to make sure that we're being, smart with our money. So let's have this conversation about being smart with it. And let's look at some options here. Chris, let's go on to our next slide. Financial aid. This is a part of that conversation. It's a little bit of a checklist we have in front of you. Completing the FAFSA, the free application for financial aid. Now, this begins the financial aid process. Now, not everyone may need it, okay? I remember being a student when my parents dropped me off. They didn't really drop me off. They had to actually have someone give us a ride because we didn't have a car. And my luggage was 2 Glad bags. That was my luggage that they dropped me off on campus. So this process was so important to me, so much so that annually it was really important that I got as much help as I could. I almost had a team together there. So, but completing this is the FAFSA is so important. Now, the FAFSA is required to be considered for all federal and state need-based aid. But it's also, in many cases, required for merit-based scholarships. So make sure that you're looking at that the FAFSA. Now, for the class of 2022, the FAFSA can be submitted anytime between October 1st, 2021 and June 30th, 2022, when the students are set to graduate, right after graduation. Now, that date is very important. So the earlier you file, the better. The reason is so in many cases, if your student plans to be in state, we have what's called the MAP grants here. And in Illinois, that's a finite amount of money, a pool of money that's designated for college-going students from Illinois who are going to school in Illinois. But it's a finite amount of money, and it dries up. And it's been drying up earlier and earlier here in Illinois. I think the last time it dried up, the end of February, beginning of March. So that's very early in the college process. So the earlier you file, the better. For that very specific reason. Many schools will use that information as well to issue or extend a financial aid package. So having that information sooner rather than later helps you make a decision on where you'd like to have your student continue their education. Now, this also is called financial aid estimators. And these are available on most of the college websites. And this allows you to kind of put in some financial information. And the school then has a calculator built into that program of what your financial aid package might look like there. very important night just around the corner. We'll have our virtual financial aid night Wednesday, October 7th. That will be at 6:30 as well. Be a great opportunity to get some information there. We'll also have some ISAC reps who will be able to share some other financial aid information. All right, Chris, let's go on to our next slide. All right, so you can see you're applying for scholarships. You can do so periodically, but here's some websites in which students can actually create an account and get emails periodically about different scholarship opportunities. We'll see sites are very highly populated, and so it's really, really a great opportunity to do some scholarship searches and experience some scholarship opportunities by different criteria, whether it's an essay. It could be just as simple as completing the application. Also, as you can see on Naviance, each of our students has a Naviance account. There's a scholarship list right in Naviance, and students can search there. But one of the more important spaces that our students have access to is the college admissions professionals, as well as their financial aid offices. They can provide lots of information about different scholarships and financial options that will be available to the student. All right, Chris, let's go on to our next slide. The biggest source of scholarships and grants is going to be the individual school itself. Visit their websites, talk to the admissions reps, whether it's in College Callers or other places, to find out. And you can talk to them early to get information on merit scholarships and need-based grants. All right, next slide, Chris. All right. ISAC, Illinois Student Assistance Corps. As I said, we'll have that rep, Ms. Castillo, be here for our financial aid night, but a lot of great information. It's an incredible resource to answer some specific questions, general questions about the FAFSA and other financial aid that you are have questions about. This year we have Ms. Castillo, who will be wonderful partner with us. ISAC always has been, and we expect the same going forward. So there's some contact information, and this information will be posted along with all the information that you'll have tonight. Our next slide, Chris. Triton. I wish we could have this all said in unison. It's Triton. It's our local gym, and it is our biggest bang for our buck. It's an incredible institution, incredible programs. The facilities are amazing. I know a lot of students, because it's close and, it's 2-year school, absolutely amazing, great buy. It's ours. Your taxes go there to pay for it. So a wonderful place, local gym. And I'm going to talk a little bit about why. Let's go to our next slide, Chris. So here's one for some of our really high achieving students can look at the Scholars Program. And this is a 2-year program for academically talented students who plan to, get a Associates of Arts degree, science degree, and go to a competitive 4-year college and university. Let's go on to our next slide, and we can look at what that looks like. Chris, okay, so again, I said competitive schools. So as you can see the list here, all really competitive schools from Tulane, UIC, University of Chicago, University of Southern California, University of Illinois, Northwestern, all solid schools that scholars from the Triton program have been able to matriculate to. Outstanding program. These names speak volumes for the program itself. Chris, let's go on to the next slide. So eligibility for that program, an SAT or ACT score above the college minimum in English and math, GPA minimum of 3.5, faculty and counselor recommendations, and obviously additional indicators of academic potential, including curriculum. Incredible program, scholars program. Definitely, if you have a student who's considering staying local, I definitely encourage you to take a look. So, Chris, let's go on to our next slide. Some of the really the highlights of the program, because there's a lot invested in these students here, so they carefully select the faculty to work with the students and certainly prepare them to experience success in some of these selective schools. Small classes so that they can provide students with really intense reading, discussions, and research opportunities to develop those skills. It's a full academic scholarship for those students who do qualify. Because they have a vested interest in it, there's so much devoted to these students. There is a lot of support for the transfer and placement opportunities, making sure, again, the students have the appropriate fit to experience success. So these students also get to participate in special activities, whether they be social or otherwise. These students have that opportunity by way of being in the scholars program. And obviously, and lastly, there's special recognition on the transcripts and diplomas for these students as well. Chris, let's go on to our next slide. Again, I mentioned that Triton is an incredible school with a lot of programs. Just we have a few listed here for you. Paralegal studies after associate's degree. Just a couple years ago, the annual income was $50,000, over $50,000. How about that? Real estate broker there with the license. So there's lots of things you can do there. One class with veterinary assistant, one course, over $27,000. So great there, wonderful opportunities. So just wanted to just highlight a few things for you. Chris, we can move on to our next slide. Cost to attend, again, we talked about bang for the buck initially. You can see here for in-district tuition, full year tuition, under $4,000. Full year, 30 credit hours, a full year under $4,000. Can't beat it any place. Absolutely amazing. And if a student is interested in the health sciences, just a little bit, just over $6,000 for a full year tuition. Absolutely amazing. Again, great bang for the buck. All right, Chris, let's go ahead and move on to our next slide. I mentioned earlier that in the spring, we're going to have some other areas, programs that we talk about, other pathways, but just want to highlight a few of the options that may be available for students: certificate programs, trade schools, proprietary schools. Those we always say proceed with caution. Make sure you're checking the details of that school, specifically retention, graduation, and debt rates of the students. Gap years, some students may want to experience a year doing something abroad, some type of community service. Some students go to work, and it's great. Apprenticeships, get paid to train for a job to experience salary later, and obviously wonderful men and women who serve our country in the military. Some other post-secondary options. Chris, let's go on to our next slide. All right. Some other resources that you can dig into, get information here. We'll have our college and career handbook, and that will be posted for you to look through, see some of this information and review it. The FIS guide to colleges. one of the source books there. You can grab that in your libraries, local libraries, Amazon, obviously. Big Future through College Board. You can get that on the website there. So four-year colleges, Peterson's Guide. So last one there, I want to point out that the Occupational Outlook Handbook. Students who might be interested in a certain career can see what the outlook is or future prospects are for specific professions. So a lot of good, helpful resources there, some things that you can dig into. All right, Chris, let's go on to our next slide. Ooh, Naviance. Naviance, Naviance, Naviance. Some of us are familiar with it, others aren't, but we want to just take a moment to introduce some, to get others reacquainted with this very important resource here. Let's go on to our next slide there, Chris. All right. So some ways to log in, and we're going to do a little bit of this in just a moment, but just want to point out some information. Logging into Naviance, going to the home page, oprfhs.org. Click on students. You'll see Naviance under student services there, and you'll be able to go into there, your student can, with their email address there, and then their password starts as their 6-digit ID plus their 6-digit birthday. And they can go ahead and log in. Now, if your student has forgotten their password, they can reach out to their counselor, and the counselor will be able to reset it remotely for the student. Now, for our parents, you can actually go to the home page as well. Click Parents. You'll see Naviance College Planning. Now, those who haven't registered previously, just click I need to register, and then follow the prompts there, and it'll accept it at the end. It'll be great. And we're going to go through the Naviance process here in just a moment, but I just want to go through some of the details. And again, all of this information will be posted as part of the presentation, so you can go back and review this information later. All right, Chris, go to our next slide. Naviance, it's a wonderful, wonderful tool. Our students get introduced to it as freshmen. Some things that can be done there. Obviously, we've mentioned college visits. They can see those and register for them. They can actually do college exploration, looking at places, college I'm thinking about, so they can actually start to dig into different schools, majors, costs, some general campus life there. They can look at super matches, scattergrams. We'll talk about that a little bit later, where students can actually see where they stand with past Oak Park River Forest High School graduates. Enrichment programs there as well. Students want to do career exploration. They can do that in Naviance. They can. There's assessments in there. First, students get acquainted with is do what you are. Give them an opportunity to assess the things that they like and don't like, and then we'll give them a list of careers that may match up with their skills, or I'm sorry, with their likes and dislikes. I go down to the About Me section, learning styles inventory. Students get to answer some questions there, find out about their learning styles and how they could complement that as they go into classroom, things to look out for, helpful tips for them as well. Develop a game plan for time in high school. And this is a really cool one, the resume. Naviance creates a formatted resume for students. Students just input their data, activities, classes, scores, so on and so forth. And Naviance will pre-format a resume for them that they can use for admissions, scholarships, employment. It's a wonderful, wonderful tool to use there. And obviously, our test scores are housed there. So wonderful tool that Naviance is, a lot of capabilities, a lot of things that students can use over their 4 years in high school. So, all right, Chris, let's go on to our next slide here. All right, so as I said before, we're going to go into live Naviance here and just take a look at what Naviance can do for us. And so parents can actually see here what we have here. So we'll give us just a second and we'll pull that up. As you can see, we're on the school webpage here. I'm gonna go down, see Naviance, and we'll just click Naviance there. And this is what your students might see. You'll find schools there. All right, so now here we are, parents. And use your email address and saw login information there. All right. We're going to select our child here. Now, some of us may have one, others may have multiple. So within Naviance, you'll be able to choose which student you'd like to review with here. In this case, it'll be Jacqueline Hansen. She's an amazing student. So different things that we can look at in Naviance. You can see different areas there. There's to the left there, you can see some information that gets pushed out for our students here. You can see Hello Seniors there. We try to give our students updates as often as we can, and you'll see that in there. Your students will as well. If you scroll down, you can see the important to-dos there. You can see that as well. And we'll go back up. You can see to the right, colleges I'm thinking about, colleges I'm applying to, and you can look at career clusters as well, different careers that the students might want to explore. They can go into the career clusters. If we scroll down a little bit, I want to just show you one thing here. We continue to go down. Now, we can look at some virtual events that may be available, whether they're tours or so on and so forth. Can dig right into those right there. So a lot of great information there. So let's go up and let's look at some of the exploration possibilities here. So let's go ahead and look at colleges I'm thinking about. All right, so you can see different schools within the program, and this is just a few that Jacqueline's interested in. She's, as I said, an amazing student, as you can tell by some of the schools that she has listed there. And right away, you can see a lot of great information there. The school itself, the delivery type, students can start to plan accordingly. That CA with a computer there, that's a Common App application. Thank you. You can see the different transmission means for the application. Whether it be Common App, electronic, certainly students can do it with snail mail as well, if you see that little stamp any place. You can see who's added to school. You can see the different application deadlines as well. So, thank you. We're going to look at the college visits. So we mentioned those before, and you can see that we have the different schools there listed, the virtual visits. And students can see all of those deadlines. Parents can see, you can see all the deadlines if you want to confer with your student, discuss some of the schools that may be coming up on campus, and you can experience those and see what is offered. You can see there's several schools that are already scheduled to be at Oak Park, and there are several more coming in the future. So a lot of great opportunities to visit with the reps. And again, as I said before, many of the reps that the students will meet there will be the individuals who will actually have major say in the admissions process. So we're going to go back up and let's go ahead and take a look at some schools, because we want to look at our one of our colleges to take a look at some of the data that's housed here. So let's look at DePaul, for example. And as you can see right away, all the information that comes up. At the top, you can see there's a virtual tour. Again, those are very important. Any communication you want to have there, even start the application app. It's a lot of great information. You can see the overview where students can learn about the campus, the different programs there, student life. Students can also see, as you can see here with the overview, gives you a lot of great information. The net price, graduation rates, acceptance rates, all things that we've just talked about here. So a lot of wonderful information, including application deadlines. And it goes down and you can see the school website there, types of school it is, gives you an idea of the population, student-faculty ratio, really job placement rate, something that we've discussed already, which is really important. And usually have a little overview of the school, location, and programs as well. So really important. Uh-oh. Give me just a moment. All righty. Admissions is another great place that we can to. So some of the information that we've just talked about there, and this is how students can actually look at the data on past Oak Park River Forest High School students. They can see the number applied, the number accepted, and the number actually enrolled year over year, and an opportunity. Now, if you continue to grow up, you've heard this word scattergrams here. Now, this is an actual scattergram, and what it does is it gives a student opportunity to see themselves and their own credentials matched up inside of the past graduates here. You can see the dotted line, the dashed line across is the average GPA as well as the average ACT score or SAT score of those accepted. And you can also see the credentials of those who are accepted, those who were denied by the excess. You can also see the data, students who might have been waitlisted as well. You can see the key at the bottom there. What's more is that one of the really cool things that a student will get to see once they're looking into scattergrams is they'll be able to see themselves in that grid also. This is really an outstanding resource for us here. So we talked about some of the careers that students can find in there as well. So again, career students are thinking about their assessments here to the right, where students can actually go in and deliver their likes, dislikes, their comfort levels in different areas, and they can actually get a sense of what careers line up with them. So again, I just wanted to give you a brief overview of what Naviance has available. I think it's a lot more fun when you dig in there on your own, but please know that you can do that at any time, any place that you have an internet connection. You can log in and get some more of this information. So I think we'll close out our Naviance walkthrough here, and then we'll go ahead and move on to our next section. All right, so again, we got some homework. What should I be doing now? Okay, so here's some things that we should be doing to prepare for what's next. Let's go on to our next slide, Chris. All right, some things that we can be doing now. So if you're an athlete, to expect or may experience scholarship opportunities at the Division I or Division II school, you can make sure that you review the updated eligibility worksheets on the NCAA website and continue to do that on a regular basis, because that does change. And the OPRF athletic department can have answer questions on how that shifts as well. Okay. Now, any student who's going to get a scholarship at Division I, II school has to be registered with NCAA eligibility centers. You can see that website is listed there as well. Now, that must be completed by the fall of 2021. Okay? And so they also need the test scores. And that's one of the criteria that they use to determine whether or not a student athlete is eligible. And so be sure that you get registered, but important to make sure you review the eligibility worksheet on a regular basis. Division III, there's no separate application for eligibility there. I'm a Division III athlete. Once you're accepted to the school, you're ready to play ball because there are no athletic scholarships involved. Yeah. All right, let's go to our next slide, Chris. All right, so something that we can do this June, right? By June 2021, keep those grades up, keep those grades up, keep those grades up, and encourage your student to work as hard as they can to try to continue to keep that altitude, because that's what college reps like to see. Continue to work hard. Research the different tests that the schools of interest require, and if there's any prep possibilities, you can do that for the winter. Be important. And you have to register and take at least one of the national tests. Again, we hope to be back in the building in the spring where our students can test there. If not, we're working really hard. Ms. Delgado has been doing incredible work to give our students every opportunity to experience the national tests. And she'll continue to do that and give our students every opportunity. Also, have students complete the resume, the game plan, the college search, and Naviance. Those are very important things that we could be doing up to June to get ourselves prepared for the process. And by June 2021, we want to make sure that we have a short list. And we talked about those reach, match, and safety schools, but a solid list of 10 by June is wonderful. And again, we want to make sure that every school on that list, the student could actually see themselves on that campus. Our next slide, Chris. Okay. Other things that we could be doing, using those scattergrams, students can actually do compare and contrast and see the best matches for themselves, and determine what is a safety school and a reach school as well. Again, reviewing the college application, the Common App, essays. Oftentimes, our department will post and deliver Common App essay prompts so students can actually prepare for some of those topics and get some practice in writing those as well. Another thing students could be doing is attending college fairs. We've gone through the college callers the college fairs, whether we're back on campus or not. There's a lot of virtual opportunities, as we've mentioned before. Another thing that we could do, the financial aid, okay, making sure that we complete those financial aid estimators if you do plan to take advantage or experience financial aid for any colleges on the list there. And lastly, you want to make sure you attend the individual meetings with your counselor this spring. This is where we really dig into the specifics to your student about their plans and work with them to make sure that they have every opportunity to meet their post-secondary options. Next slide, Chris. All right, September, some other things we can be doing this summer. Finalize the list. Again, we talked about that essay and getting those essay prompts. Go ahead and write a rough draft. If a student write that rough draft, it can be reviewed by the counselor or trusted teacher. Complete as many national scholarships applications as possible. All money is good money in scholarships, okay? Making sure that a student can cast a wide net, certainly if cost is important. Complete those resumes, as I said in the last slide there. Another thing is to determine which teachers or students are going to ask for recommendation letters. When we want the students to ask toward the end of the year to really get a solid list, and so the students will have a teacher who can truly speak to their performance. And again, fill out that financial aid estimator there. It's going to be very important. All right, Chris, let's go on to our next slide. All right. Google Classroom for class of 2022. Now, students are there, and it's for the students, but they can invite parents to join. All the materials and group presentations, including this one, is there. So the information that will be in that Google Classroom is PowerPoint presentation, the College and Career Handbook, which I mentioned earlier, the instructions, which is very important to linking the Khan accounts with College boards that will deliver that personalized test prep curriculum. And also that checklist that we just went through briefly is going to be posted in Google Classroom as well. And you can see below the classroom code, and it will provide everything that we present to students, and parents will be listed there if you have to go back to review at any time. All right, our next slide, Chris. Folks, I really appreciate you all taking this very important time to spend with us tonight. I do hope that you were able to get some information here to really set a foundation for your post-secondary options here, to set a foundation for the college exploration for you and your student, to form a really strong partnership going forward. But I am so thrilled that you're here. So proud of our team for putting it together. Be sure to contact your student's counselor with any questions this year and throughout the process. We're a team. It's a strong partnership between your counselor, you, and your student. So thanks again, folks. Make it a great night. And as I said before, there are going to be some folks who we're going to stick around as a team to answer some unanswered questions. But before you post anything in there, I know there have been a few questions posted. But scroll through there. Your question may have been answered already. But again, we're going to stick around to answer some of the unanswered questions here. But again, thanks for joining us this evening. And again, we're going to be a team.
Good evening. If you don't mind, I would like to take the first question we have about what resources are available for students to consider universities abroad. So from my experience, and my colleagues please jump in, I noticed that universities in UK and EU have a lot of different expectations that that students need to check, and right away, even now, figure out if they have a school in mind. They should review what the colleges require. The big issue that I came across was transcripts, because students will need transcripts that are actually already filled. They will need official transcripts. But what I would do the most, please contact the counselor, and because the process is a little bit different than what we do with our domestic colleges.
My name is Jacqueline Hansen. I'm one of the counselors. I'm happy to answer any questions. I think a lot of the questions we had tonight, we answered via the question and answer section. But we are happy to answer any now. So we're just looking to see what pops up. So it looks like one of the questions is about the SAT-2 or the ACT, and what the plan is for the PSAT this year. So the PSAT, OPRF does plan to host the PSAT on October 17th, and that is for juniors, and that is also used for the national qualifier for national merit. So there was information sent out via our testing office on how to sign up for the PSAT. It is an optional test. It's a practice SAT. So you can sign up for that. If you did not get that email or don't remember getting it, please reach out to your individual counselor. Regarding the SAT-2, you register for the SAT-2 at the College Board, and you can take it on any date that the SAT is offered, except for the March date. And you can't take the SAT and the SAT-2 on the same day, but you can take up to 3 subject tests on one day. Hopefully that makes sense. And then the ACT also you would sign up for at act.org.
Yeah, hi, my name is Esteban Medina, also one of the counselors. This question has come up a few times, but please know that all the materials from this presentation, including the College and Career Handbook, will be sent out via email to all junior parents and families, in addition to being posted in the Class of 22 Google Classroom. Only students are allowed to join the Google Classroom. However, they can invite parents and guardians to be viewers. The question has come up on how. We will post instructions inside the Google Classroom this week on how to do that, so that students and parents can then both be involved in the classroom.
Sorry, just scrolling through some of these. Let's see. So the SAT, just a quick question, because I know there's a lot of questions about what is a subject test in the SAT-2. I highly recommend checking out in each individual college if they require the SAT-2, which is also called the subject test. Typically, it's not required of most colleges. It's usually the more highly selective colleges that will require the subject test. So you could check individual websites to see if they even require it. The writing portion of the SAT, there are some colleges that require the writing portion of the ACT. That's not related to coronavirus. It's just dependent on the college and if they require the writing portion.
In terms of the suggestion on when to take SAT-2s, I think typically what you want to make sure that you take them with enough time to meet the college deadlines. But soon after you take a class in that content area is advisable, because that's likely when the material is most fresh for students. So that would be advisable. So if you're doing, a math, depending on which math level SAT you're taking, you'd want to probably take it while you're taking the class that year towards the end of the year. So again, that material is pretty fresh in your mind, and students have been preparing for it that year.
There's a question about the ACT again, and kind of I'm looking at two separate questions that are related. Where can you take the ACT, and does a junior need to take it? So that's a twofold question. One, do they need to take the ACT? My recommendation for students is if they're doing really well on the PSAT that they've taken in freshman and sophomore year fall and freshman year spring, and they seem to be doing well and placing in a higher percentage nationally, then you may want to stick with the SAT, especially because the Khan Academy review is amazing and free. But if a student is not doing as well on it as they would hope, then an ACT is a very different test, and they may do better on the ACT. There's a little bit difference in the amount of math and the amount of geometry and the amount of time that you have on each question. So I tend to recommend that they take an ACT maybe in February, sometime early, to see how they do. And then whatever test they do better on, they feel more comfortable with, focus in on that test for test prep.
Also,
regarding do they have to take it, they do not have to take the ACT. Most colleges take either the ACT or the SAT if they require testing at all. So you can take either one.
and also just to make sure that parents are aware, is that all juniors are expected to take SAT, as we are a SAT state, as Mr. Hobson mentioned. SAT is also a graduation requirement for the state. So, for example, currently our juniors are scheduled in April to take the SAT. We just not know what's going to happen with COVID. But every single one of our students, our juniors, does in the past years did take the SAT or ACT before we switched to SAT school.
There's a question on there that asks about Naviance showing if an ACT is required for a specific school. We always encourage students to look on the college website directly. Naviance does a good job housing a lot of information, but it is a lot of information to keep track of when you think about how many colleges and universities are within Naviance. So sometimes that information isn't always the most up to date. So we always encourage parents, families, and students to check the college website for the most up-to-date information, including what's required for college admissions.
There's a question about recommendation letters for teachers to change it up a little bit from testing. Do you get a commitment from teachers to write letters by the end of this year, or the actual letters? I recommend, I think we all would recommend that if a student has a good relationship with a junior year teacher, that would be a good person to ask for a letter of recommendation. And I do think that they appreciate getting as much heads up as possible. So if they know that, let's say their AP English teacher is somebody they plan to ask for a letter, giving them a heads up at the end of junior year is nice, and then they can use the summer if they so choose to write the letter, and then they can follow up with them in the fall. But I do recommend talking to that your child talks to their counselor, their individual counselor, to get advice on which teachers, how many teachers, the type of teacher to ask for their admission application. There's a question about the UK and EU and about finding resources for looking for universities there. I didn't answer that because I didn't have a good answer for that, and I defer to my colleagues. I did at one time have some resources, but I changed computers and I lost those links. However, I am very happy. We can send that out perhaps maybe some links when we send out the email with the recording from tonight. What do you think, team members? Sound good?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep, absolutely.
Another question about considering signing up for a test somewhere other than OPRF in case we're not able to administer the test. And I think it wouldn't be a bad idea, definitely. We don't know how many seats are out there, and looking at test dates, even and putting together a college and career handbook. You know, there are a much more limited number of test dates, so it is making it a little more challenging to find spots. So definitely, if you can sign up somewhere else, by all means, go ahead. You know, the school is doing everything it can to be able to administer the tests that we're planning on. Question about submitting college applications. That'll all happen at the beginning of senior year. The earliest applications that most students will be worrying about is November 1st. There are a few that are as early as October 15th, but that's a very small number, and typically that's for very specific programs at certain schools where we would see a deadline that early. Otherwise, November 1st, November 15th tend to be the most common early deadlines at the beginning of senior year for students in college applications.
There is a question that's been, people have voted on at the top here. How will extracurricular opportunities important to applications be addressed in setting of remote learning? If I'm reading that correctly, you're talking about in terms of the college applications, and since students haven't been able to participate as much as they typically would, how would that be looked at? One thing to keep in mind, I think it's really important to keep in mind that this is a global pandemic, and so every student is dealing with the same thing, and so colleges are not going to look differently at OPRF than they would at any other high school in terms of the lack of opportunities to be as involved as they normally would. So I think in terms of trying to bring down the angst of some of our students, just remembering that is important. And then having said that, there are some opportunities that are still out there, a lot of them virtual. But for instance, I had a student do an art program through an East Coast school this summer that was supposed to be a 2-month program in Rhode Island, and they were able to do it virtually at their house. So there are still some opportunities out there. And in Naviance, as Mr. Hobson showed earlier, there is a section on enrichment programs. So you can start there in terms of looking at different things, but also just looking at most colleges have them. So if your student wants to stick local, if they want to go East-West Coast, if they want to travel, or if they can't travel, at least get an idea of a particular college. You can start with just going to those colleges and saying, what do you have for summer programs?
Question about registering for Naviance came up from the parent side. The registration code is the same format for all. It all depends on how you're listed in Skyward, whether you're the first guardian in there or the second guardian. If you're the first guardian, it's capital A with your student's ID number. That's the registration code. If you're listed as the second guardian in Skyward, it would be capital B and then the 6-digit ID number of your student. That would be your registration code.
And I did post the information on that slide with those instructions in a number of the questions. If you look at the answered questions, they're in there.
A question about rec letters. Can they come from sophomore year teachers, or do they have to be junior year teachers, junior or senior year teachers? I think typically we suggest that students look for teachers in junior and senior year. However, colleges will be the ones who really decide which teachers they're looking for. So it's always, again, good to always go back to the college website and see if they have any guidelines or policies around which teachers or which year teachers they're looking for rec letters from.
And I'll say that typically it's the upper class teachers. However, there may be a teacher from freshman, sophomore year who has a compelling story that they can share about that student. And certainly we want to be able to submit that on the student's behalf to share their entire experience in high school.
if they took AP US History sophomore year. Sometimes that's a compelling story. As far as college essay practice, where can we find prompts and able to practice, have teachers review? You can actually find right now the essay questions from the Common Application on the Common Application website. You'll find their essays there, and that would be a good place to start because it's more than likely that your student will be looking at the Common App next year for at least a few schools. You can also look at the applications on specific college websites and look at this year's essays and work on them. Those are two possible opportunities. And then earlier tonight, we had a college essay writing workshop that was offered by our division for seniors. So, and that was an actual workshop where they got to work on their essays with counselors. So those are just some opportunities. Generally, how many recommendation letters do colleges require? I would say it's safe to say 2 in general. There are those that allow 3. There are those that only allow 1. But to be safe, I would say if a student's trying to figure out how many by the end of this year to ask for, and they have a few teachers, I would say 2 is pretty safe.
There was a question about AP exams and AP test scores. On College Board's website, there is a database there where you can look up every single college in their database and see exactly which exams and what scores are required in order to get college credit for it.
If you have trouble signing into Naviance, email family access, all one word, at oprfhs.org. So family access at oprfhs.org, and they can look into it and see why there's an issue.
Additionally, families who may have had a student who has already graduated, the profiles might not be linked together, so you might not see the younger students. Emailing family access at oprfhs.org, and they will be able to link the account so that you'll be able to see all your students under one login instead of having to manage more than one. There's a question that said something about for college scores and grades required for acceptance. I think the initial question was if Naviance would indicate whether an ACT was required, and what I had suggested was looking on the college website to see what their requirements are, as that's where you're going to find the most up-to-date information. And typically when you're on a college website, there's a section for undergraduate admissions, and on there you should see what their requirements are, hopefully in some kind of listed way, so that's easy to look through and comb through what they need. They don't typically talk about specific scores necessarily or specific grades that they look for, but they might be able to give you a range of the profiles of students that were admitted the previous year to give you an idea of what they're looking for in those areas to offer admission to a student.
There was a question early on about gap year, gap year options, and typically OPRF actually hosts a gap year fair in January. I don't know the status of that right now. It's actually through a national organization, and they bring a number of different programs that do gap year. So it's really not up to us. It's whether or not they're doing it virtually or it'll be in person. But if they do it virtually, I'm sure that we will send information out. And if it's in person, you can attend. They also, I know New Trier also hosts it on a different day than we do. So there's a couple opportunities. And I think otherwise, I would recommend checking with your child's individual counselor so that they can help with specifically what your child might be looking for and at. The Rotary Club also has much cheaper programs, so you might want to check out the Rotary Club because it's a lot cheaper than a lot of those gap year programs.
Another question on a recommendation letter, if somebody who is not a teacher can write one, absolutely. We do have to talk about the different ways of getting that to the colleges. Within our system, Naviance, it's only for teachers, so only teachers can use Naviance to send rec letters. So in some cases, if it's an outside recommender, like a boss or someone from a volunteer experience, a coach, something like that, they would often send the rec letter directly to the college admission office on behalf of the student. Sometimes we can find a way to scan them in and kind of send them digitally with our packet. So when we get to that point, if your student is interested in getting a rec letter from someone outside of OPRF, just have them communicate with their counselor and we can figure out a way to get that to the admission office for them.
There's a question about the special ed department, if they're doing a virtual presentation on higher ed. I don't know the answer to that. I do know that they have in past years done a program on higher ed and transition programs in college. And I don't know why they wouldn't do that at least virtually this year or try to. There's also some fairs in the area that are geared specifically towards students with different types of disabilities. So please reach out to your individual counselor if you have that question and we can send you in the right direction.
And I'd add that students should also reach out, and parents reach out to their case manager as well for students, because each student in the special education department will have time with a transition specialist on an individual basis.
Question on college grants and scholarships. Definitely college websites are a great resource. They often have a section dedicated to just financial aid where they share links and resources, not just for stuff specific to their school, but also national resources that students can apply for.
There's a question about 60% of schools being test optional, whether somebody should focus on just test optional schools. I would highly recommend talking with your child's individual counselor to find out the best plan. I would hate to answer that globally because I think every student is so individual and different. It's going to depend on their overall GPA, the classes they've taken, their GPA trend over 4 years of high school, the type of school they want, the type of major that they want. All of that is going to come into play with how I would advise for that question. However, I do think absolutely if a student does not test as high as their GPA would make you think they would, then test optional schools should likely be on that list. There is a cost for the PSAT. And there's an email that went out and there's 3 steps. Am I remembering that or am I mixing up with the AP? Just signing up for the PSAT. Yeah, October 17th. There's an email from Myra Delgado that has information specifically on how to register for the PSAT and the cost that's involved. If you can't find that email, please reach out to your individual individual counselor, and they can send you, make sure you have that information.
All right, let's look at one last question.
Okay.
Well, looking at one last question. I would also recommend reviewing the materials you received in the email today or next few days regarding this presentation, especially the College Career Handbook. There's a lot of great information regarding FAFSA or scholarships, or just information about how to ask for letter recommendation. What do you need to fill out transcript release form, like what information. And after you review those documents, please feel free to reach out to your child's counselor. There were so many great questions today, and I really appreciate all the parents coming out virtually and asking questions. Any closing remarks? Any question.
Well, we said one more question. We said one more question. So I'm just going to answer one that we haven't touched on yet and is an important one. It's the financial aid question. So how do you explore college grants and scholarships from schools? There are, the best way is to go to each individual college website to find out what scholarships they offer. And I would even reach out to admission counselors for colleges that are on the final list, because sometimes there are grants and scholarships that are kind of hidden in the small print that you don't even see right away on the website. So I would definitely talk to the college callers or have your child do that this spring at least. There is information on the FAFSA website. Also in the presentation from Mr. Hobson was talking about, there's a number of excellent scholarship websites. Those scholarship websites are national scholarships. So that would be on top of any institutional aid that a college would give to a student. Again, reach out to your individual counselor and they can kind of guide you in the right place, in the right direction.
Thank you for that. And thank you, parents, all for joining us this evening. I hope we met our goals this evening with all the information that was shared, some incredible questions. Continue to reach out to your individual counselors. We're here to partner with you through this very important process. Again, thank you. And we enjoyed having you and we enjoyed presenting with you. It's an amazing team, isn't it? Ms. Hanson, Mr. Medina, Mr. Radishevsky. Thank you all.
Thank you, Mr. Hobson.
Mr. Hobson.
Have a good night, folks.